What an excellent evening for an Exorcist live stream. All right, press play on your DVD or your laser disc or your Blu-ray, or press play on that Amazon Prime, which it'll have a commercial coming up. So if you're watching on Amazon Prime or whatever it is, I'll give you a moment to get it queued up. Go ahead and press play to make sure there's no commercial or anything before, because I'm watching it through Prime myself and I'm getting a commercial for football right now. So I'm going to skip this commercial and, all right, cue this bad boy up. All right. We're about a minute in and we're going to start the movie in 3, 2, 1, go. So Morgan Creek, Morgan Creek owns The Exorcist. That's why we're not seeing the Warner Brothers logo this time. And what Blumhouse or whoever it was paid $400 million for the right to make 3 Exorcist films. Well, tonight we're not talking about excrement. We're talking about The Exorcist 3. So it's right off the bat. Here's Father Dyer, played by Ed Flanders. So different actor, the same character. And this opening right here is very much a repeat of the very end of The Exorcist, 1973. George C. Scott is playing Lieutenant Kinderman. Now, Kinderman was played by Lee J. Cobb in the first film. So we're getting a different type of Kinderman in this movie than what we get in the book and film The Exorcist. Also, hear this, Damien. Both Exorcist 3 and the novel Legion that this is based on kind of go back and change some things, and one of them being Lieutenant Kinderman and Damien Karras are supposed to be best friends, even though they barely got a chance to know each other in the novel The Exorcist and the movie The Exorcist. But that's okay, go with it. That's one of the things I love about Blatty's work is there are these rough things like that in there, but instead of holding the story back, if you accept it, it actually makes for a great reading and movie watching experience because it's just better for the story. So he just does it. That's why this stuff is timeless, like a myth. Um, all right, creepy music. We got a little taste of Tubular Bells right there because it is an Exorcist film, so you got to give the Tubular Bells, and I'm glad they did that. But the guy who does the score for this is really creepy, and along with the sound design, it makes for such a scary movie. The Exorcist is a powerful movie, but The Exorcist 3 is really scary, from beginning to end. And it delivers on the chill. It has the same kind of creepiness as those late 80s, early 90s movies can. So Blatty does a great job of making a horror film of its time, but it's also surreal and innovative. So we got Scott Wilson, Ed Flanders, Jason Miller, people who um, are in the Ninth Configuration, which is the only other film William Peter Blatty ever directed, and it's also based on one of his novels. The stuff with the priests and cassocks running across the street, just really creepy. And this was one of Jeffrey Dahmer's favorite films because in The Exorcist, demon possessed folks have these like yellow contact lenses. It's kind of in the first Exorcist movie, but it's especially in this one. William Peter Blatty knew what he was doing. There's other films where these creatures have yellow contact lenses, and it's very creepy in the same way that the Joker shows up in other films as this kind of representation of Satan, the demonic, to the point where after Witches of Eastwick, Jack Nicholson has played Satan ever since. He's the Joker in Batman. It's this Ozymandias character, really creepy. And William Peter Blatty is such a brilliant author, and um, a man who was paid by the CIA to design psychological tortures for people pre-writing The Exorcist. So of course he knew what he was doing. He's tapping into something, and it's no surprise that Dahmer was attracted to how Blatty represented evil. So this is Georgetown near Washington, D.C., just like where the first film takes place. Um, really beautiful on-location cinematography here. And the first film does the same thing, but it's a lot more explicit in this film, and that's because William Peter Blatty loves Georgetown. If you read the novel The Exorcist, he really does his best to give you a picture of it. And he feels such a responsibility that he even puts in the novel an afterword letting you know that some of his descriptions, if they weren't completely accurate, if they needed to be a little different from the story, he um he lets you know that. Now this actor right here talking to Ed Flanders, you probably won't recognize him because he's so young. He's married to the chick from Toby Hooper's The Funhouse and Amadeus. Really nice guy. And besides his character, this film largely features middle-aged and elderly characters. A lot of great details in this movie too, the production design. And I imagine a lot of that was Blatty since these are his characters. This is great stuff here too. The movie opens really strongly. It has a great first act. And it's a murder mystery the same way that the Exorcist novel is a murder mystery. That's one thing that you do not get in William Friedkin's film, this murder mystery element. Yes, Lieutenant Kinderman's trying to figure out who killed Burke Dennings and is kind of there on the outskirts of the film, but I wouldn't even call it a subplot. Um, he's there to give us exposition and just to be antagonistic. Yeah, that's great. That's commendable. The Fly. And that guy's in The Fly too, which came out just a couple years before this. So, great dialogue, great casting. Man, when this film, when this work goes into the public domain, right? And Exorcist 3/Legion play. So Lieutenant Kinderman is like this deranged liberal in this movie. He just goes off calling his colleagues racist while just making these really insane comments. It's like he's saying the racist things. He's claiming that they're saying racist things, but they're coming out of his mouth, and it's obviously jokes. It's just really weird. So I can imagine audiences going into this movie, especially if they hadn't read the book and they don't really remember the Kinderman character, they were probably thinking, "What the hell are we watching? This It's like a crazy Murder, She Wrote thing, supernatural Murder, She Wrote. But maybe that was maybe th it was a different time. You had these, middle-aged detectives back then, and Blatty claims that Columbo rips off the Kinderman character, and the guy that invented Columbo, apparently he and, Blatty were gonna create this television series. They were developing a television series for Kinderman, and so, Blatty may have created the, like, TV show middle-age m mystery solving genre that I know, I grew up watching, and my grandma loved that stuff. My god. It's really weird. So George C. Scott, playing Kinderman, the woman playing his wife, she's dubbed. This whole movie, all her lines are dubbed. Very bizarre. It makes these scenes weird. So, like, everyone in this movie is a racist, and George C. Scott is just giving these pop cultural quips. This is The Tombs, which is also featured in the film The Exorcist, but in the scene where he's like, "I think I'm losing my faith, Tom." This is that same play. Oh, I'm sorry. No, they're at the movie theater. They're not to the Tombs yet. But in that scene, we're gonna get more of Blatty just giving us Georgetown and these spots. So that's another thing that makes The Exorcist really cool is it's grounded in real geographical places. I have no idea if this is an actual movie theater in Georgetown, but very well could be. This is an interesting edit here. The first time you watch this, it like happens so fast. You're like, are people coming out? They just watched the movie, but and now it cuts from they're in the lobby about to see the movie to they're in the lobby. They just saw the movie. It's a harsh cut, but but there are some cuts in this movie that even though they're harsh, they give the movie an interesting propelled pacing. Again, in a similar but slightly different way that the first Exorcist movie does, where we just have to infer that time has passed by what the characters are saying. Notably, when Father Dyer is telling Chris McNeil that Father Karras's mother has died at home and they didn't find her for several days, and the last time we saw her, she was actually like basically in an asylum. So a lot of time must have passed. This is a great part where he's talking about the carp in his bathtub. And all of this stuff is from the first Exorcist, or from the Exorcist novel. But in another instance of Blatty kind of maybe wishing like he had done something a little different in The Exorcist, so he kind of does it a second time or does it different in Legion. In Legion, you get the same joke. Um, but anyway, here it is in Exorcist 3 because it wasn't in Exorcist 1. And here we are in the tombs. I don't know if this place is still there. It'd be cool to drink some coffee and eat a cheeseburger there, whatever they serve. Have a beer with a priest. Imagine you can't smoke there anymore. So we're about to find out what happened to this little black boy that we saw in the dream sequence earlier, and it's quite horrific. Just these ridiculous references. But Kinderman's a total curmudgeon in this. He's a lot grumpier, a lot angrier. And you could say it's a different take on the character, or perhaps the death of Damien Karras really did weigh on Kinderman, and that's why Blatty makes this change where all of a sudden he is close friends with Father Damien Karras because it gives his character motivation to not so much that it gives him motivation, but it affects him more. This case, when certain things come to light about the Gemini killer. Yeah, it's a great moment where the waitress interrupts and it's all tense and they're disturbed. Those are good moments, I haven't seen that overused in cinema where you could have a story where a character's telling something secret, uncomfortable, and the waiter comes up and interrupts them. Kind of makes the audience wait, makes the reader wait. A lot of old people in this movie. Like, look at all these old people characters. They look really creepy. One of the scariest scenes in the whole movie. This voice rivals Mercedes McCambridge in The Exorcist, even though, again, similar but very different. And this whole, first act of the movie, we don't know what's going on. We don't know who the Gemini killer is. So these things are happening, and we don't know why. They're really creepy, and it makes for a movie with such great rewatch value. And because I could watch it a second time and be like, okay, so yeah, in this scene, he's reacting this way because this has happened to him. But the other cool thing is, if you watch this movie once a year, once every several years, you're still gonna kind of forget enough because the revelations of this movie are followed up by such insane twists that you kind of forget stuff. So it's got great rewatch value, but it's not just that, oh, I understand what's happening now because I've seen it before. But you kind of get lost every time in the same way that you do with a Jalo, where Jalos have twists and revelations, and when you watch them again, it's like, oh, this is so obvious. But in other ways, it's you kind of forget and you have to enter the mystery all over again, and I love that. And I don't know if it's the early 90s just being a parent here, but this movie almost feels like it could take place in the same universe as Bad Lieutenant. Even though they're in the DC area, it's just that Catholic New York thing with violence happening. Makes me think of Abel Ferrara. And this is like a cop thriller. This is a psychological thriller and a horror film. Psychological thriller slash supernatural horror. I'm padding the job. So many great lines in here. George C. Scott kills it. I wonder why he said yes to this movie. I'm guessing it was for the paycheck. The Exorcist 3, George C. Scott. Now, he had done Firestarter, like what, 8 years before? So I guess he wasn't opposed to doing schlock. And The Changeling is another horror film he makes that I think has been consistently beloved. I'm not positive. I know people love it now, but I think The Changeling, just like Ghost Story, people have always liked that movie. This has been like one single shot the whole time, and I think I saw the camera shake just a little bit right there at the end when the gurney went by. But It's barely noticeable. See how they, like, spray down all the streets with water to just get that nice reflective look? I think that goes back to Michael Mann's Heat, not Heat, Thief. I think that's the movie that started that whole thing, and it looks great. This is creepy, you're hearing the sound, you don't know what it is. You're just hearing this creepy sound. Blatty lets you hear it first before he shows you. The Exorcist, some of the best sound design ever. What, didn't freaking get the dude that does the sound on Jodorowsky's Autobo to do that? This movie, Exorcist 3, has great sound design as well, and the music is just so creepy. This actor right here, this cop that's talking to Kinderman, he's really great. He gets some really good moments, and a lot of it, he's just reacting, and he's just still, and he's just there. Yeah, Blatty and his casting director did a killer job casting this flick. Slow asphyxiation. Alright, so we get this great bromance with Father Dyer and Lieutenant Kinderman, and the movie suggests that this is the relationship that Kinderman had with Karis, even though that was actually non-existent in The Exorcist. But it's kind of an interesting way to, first of all, create a sequel to The Exorcist. Like, where can you even go? So you get this, like, it's like Blatty really wanted to write a Dostoevsky story or something, and that definitely comes out more in the novel Legion. Legion is creepy, but it's not as, just like the book, the supernatural stuff in Legion, through most of it, you're not positive if it's really supernatural and really happening. The Exorcist is like that, but the movie is not. I guess because 'cause you're seeing it. So when you're seeing it in a movie, it's like, yeah, it's really happening, as opposed to when you're reading in a book and characters are questioning, like, what is really going on? But because of studio interference, The Exorcist 3 is a lot more on the supernatural over the top side. But it is an example of studio interference helping the movie, because I don't think the Legion cut is superior. I think it's better with the studio meddling. But I also think Exorcist II: The Heretic is a really fun dream movie, and, uh, and I like a lot of things about it, so, and I'll also say, what the home video cut, is that the, yeah, the home video cut where, um, John Borman tried to fix Exorcist II: The Heretic. Yeah, that's it's like he tries to cut out what he thinks, I guess, what the parts that audiences laughed at. So then you get kind of a neutered film. But it's interesting to watch a movie like that just to get a different sense of how it can be paced different. So this whole part of the movie, we're getting, like, how the killer is killing people, um, and it's real disturbing, it's really smart. And now we're about to find out that two different people um, committed these two murders. So the young boy and now this priest in the confessional. So even though they were able to get fingerprints, it's like what um, this is really upsetting. It's two different people. So how can it be the same killer? Two murders done exactly the same way. You're thinking it's the same person, right? But no, two different fingerprints. So there's the audience still doesn't know what is going on in this movie, other than there's a serial killer on the loose. But two different people committed these murders. Woo! All right, Kinderman's with his family, so we're also establishing he's got people in his life that he cares about, and these creepy murders are happening just right around him. And keep in mind, just like Chris McNeil in The Exorcist, he's an atheist. A jaded atheist. He's not a happy guy. And we get a Moonlight Sonata from a music box next to his table with a ballerina in it. And his daughter's a ballerina. Oh, we're entering a dream. All right. I don't know what this is. It looks like an Orthodox church that was turned into a mosque, but it's absolutely beautiful. And the fact that Blatty thought they should go here and film for what's supposed to be like, I guess, a toll house. This place, like, they're not in heaven, but these are like dead people who are somewhere in the sky waiting to travel somewhere. A lot of cameos. And not only are there cameos, but there are extras in this scene who are now famous, but it's technically not a cameo. They're just an extra who gets to say a line. Samuel Jackson, right there. He's going to get to say one line. Nobody knew who he was yet, but it's just the fact that someone who's a super iconic now got to be in a pretty cool sequel to The Exorcist. I imagine studios did not like this stuff, but I'm glad that Blatty was like, "Nah, I'm gonna have angels put out tarot cards and it's weird jazz stuff." See, I don't know who that athlete is. He's a basketball player. Now, that's concerning. We saw the other priest who was decapitated in the stream sequence with his head back on, but we've just seen Father Dyer with the same staples in his neck. Uh-oh. This is a great way to show this moment. Kinderman is getting the call that his best friend has been murdered. We're hearing the voice, but it's just an establishing shot of his home. A great shot. His POV coming in, everybody's looking at him. And notice it's a dolly. It's not handheld. Handheld would be too much. And they hold it. See, this is similar to a shot you'd see in Silence of the Lambs, which comes out same year. In fact, there's a couple things in this movie that are done in a way surprisingly similar to how Jonathan Demme and Tak Fujimoto would shoot the Silence of the Lambs. They were shooting Silence of the Lambs at the exact same time. Yeah, George C. Scott just makes me think of my grandpa. He looks like my paternal grandpa in this. It's really interesting to have. I mean, I don't want to call him elderly, but I guess just because he makes me think of my grandpa, he makes me think of someone who's beyond middle age. That's for sure. But I don't know, is George C. Scott in his 50s here? I would think he's like 62, something like that here. Older than that, actually. But again, I could be wrong. It could just be my associations. And we're getting Blatty showing us his reactions, but we haven't actually seen what's happened to Father Dyer. We just know he's dead and under a sheet. I've never noticed that before, but that crucifix right there, that looked like the Grim Reaper on a cross. That was interesting. There's another moment with the Joker in a statue later, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually what I did see right there. So the serial killer does wacky stuff. Is Blatty putting this in here because he's just trying to think of creative ways for a serial killer to kill somebody and then do stuff with them? I think some of this is that Blatty wanting to create something clever, something unique, and also just something evil. Trying to think like what would be the most messed up thing. So even though it is super specific and sadistic and creepy, it also gives me the vibe of it came from somebody who's actually none of those things and is just super intelligent trying to think of a creepy thing. You hear that sound a lot in this movie, that like churning stomach growl sound. It's a cool effect. So we've entered the second act here, and a nice character has been taken from us. So kind of a psycho thing, and our protagonist, he's getting a lot grumpier now. Like his best friend's been killed, and he's having to work the case, and he's essentially like told the hospital, no one in, no one out. So that's going to create some conflict and some aggression, and we're going to get to see George C. Scott really lose his shit and act crazy. This actress is interesting. I can't think of anything else I've seen her in. And she also looks like the woman we saw earlier with the old lady, even though that's never confirmed. But it would make sense. Like this nurse is helping the old people go out to commit the murders. Well, I like how it's never confirmed. And that other woman looked just different enough to where it probably isn't her. But it's weird because the movie gives the impression of like just a cult, a conspiracy, and it's just enough on the edges of the movie, and we never get resolution with it that it creates this idea of a larger Exorcist universe. And this movie's really good about that. It still doesn't give away too much, and it's still ambiguous, but it goes a lot more into the Exorcist universe, not just with Georgetown being featured a lot more, but just these supporting characters, these creepy old people, and all the stuff we're going to get to hear later with Brad Dourif, and the Jason Miller scenes where the Gemini killer talks about the afterlife and he talks about Satan and demons. I really like all this stuff with the catatonic folks in this ward. And this is a funny moment. There's a lot of little funny moments in Exorcist 3. I think that's Blue from Old School, which I guess comes out only about 10 years later, which is crazy to say that Old School was made that close to Exorcist 3. My God, how time flies. I'd be very proud to believe so. That's a nice thing to say. Creepy Exorcist sounds. There's that low grumble roar thing there. That's an odd place to put that effect. It's real silly and strange and creepy. And that's the funny thing about this movie. William Peter Blatty makes some strange post-production directorial decisions that are kinda goofy, but in a way, it makes the movie even creepier. Maybe it's because it's with old people. Like, you can do goofy stuff with old people, and it'll still be kinda scary. Maybe it's because Blatty is so freaking smart. He knows that if he gives us 2 hours of old people, it's gonna subconsciously make us think about our own death. Therefore, it creates a sense of dread. The Exorcist film has dread all through it, and it's not as conventionally a horror film as this one, but this flick is definitely scary. All these close-ups of old people. And this woman, I don't know if she has dementia or what's going on, but apparently she's not all there. And I think the writing here is done tastefully and pretty good. And this whole "you will do well," she goes through like not trusting him to being nice to him. It's a real quick exchange, but it's masterfully done. So Scott Wilson as this doctor here, he's a really weird character that we don't get a lot of background on, but just the set dressing in his office is super peculiar. Occult stuff everywhere, pornography. He I can't remember what his office looks like in the book, but his character there's stuff with his character in the book that's not in this movie, and that's the stuff, from the book that some of the most memorable stuff to me. And I also wanna say a big difference with the book is, if I'm remembering right, we're like 3/4 of the way through the book when Father Dyer dies, whereas in this movie, it's like the first plot point. Because it really has been too long since I've read that book. It's been about 5 years. It was right after Blatty died, so I'm gonna have to go back and reread it. Alright, so the movie's pretty sure you know who you're looking at here, and we're hearing his voice. So, that's Jason Miller. That's Damian Karras. Yeah, I mean, he's in the shadow, but the movie is showing us his face. That's clearly Father Karras. And now he's spoken someone else's like, what is going on? Now, this is a great scene. George C. Scott's gonna get really angry and really emotional. You don't see actors do this in a lot of movies, and this is a horror movie. God, is he like 70 years old in this? Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. Don't drink, y'all. It turns your hair white, makes your skin age. This movie's really hard to do commentary for in a way that I haven't noticed with the other possession films we've watched. And I think it's because the writing and acting is so interesting that, I mean, it just really pulls me in. I'm just, like, wanna watch it. So at this point in the movie, we are learning that the Gemini killer is dead, and that this whole time with these 2 murders we've seen so far, that George C. Scott has been seeing that these people are killed in the exact same way that the Gemini killer did it. And not only that, but the public was never told the specifics of how the Gemini killer operated. So, super disturbing and weird. We basically have murders being committed in the exact same fashion as a serial killer who's been dead for 15 years. But how would anyone know? It can't be a copycat killer because the public didn't know the specifics. So, we're about halfway through the 2nd act of this film, and we're getting just more twists and turns and revelations, and even though the audience has just been shown that Damien Karras is in that cell, our protagonist has not discovered that yet, so that's gonna be another huge revelation, and it's worth noting the pacing in this movie and when Blatty decides to show you something. Like, we're having this revelation here, we're hearing the character's thoughts, right? But then the movie's also showing us something that the protagonist doesn't know yet. That's a really interesting way, to reveal things as the plot unfolds, and the novel's not doing it that way, but 2 different media, you know? This is also a great example, this scene right here of, how to deliver exposition. We're never questioning this doesn't feel like George C. Scott is just telling us information we need to know, because in the plot of the story and the conflict of the story, he has to tell this information right now, because no one understands why he's freaking out. The movie, even though it has these funny moments, also takes itself so seriously that it keeps it creepy. I don't know, um William Peter Blatty is interesting like that. Like, he's a really funny guy who also took himself really seriously. I don't know anybody else who gets away with that or just embraces that. This whole like, it would be like if Bergman had written comedies before. Well, I guess Bergman kind of directed comedies. I don't know. I like it though because I like humor, but I also like the super serious. But I think you need both, and a lot of people aren't good at doing both. I like it when I can remember something is totally scary and grim, but it actually does have some funny stuff in it. Like Stroszek. All right, next time we see that statue, it's gonna have a Joker head. This is probably one of my favorite sequences in the movie. It's really creepy. They talk about Reagan and how they basically let you know, like, in case you don't know who Lieutenant Kinderman is and all these characters, this is what makes it an Exorcist sequel. And then, of course, when the dean mentions that, like, he immediately is like, "Oh, I don't care about that. I just mentioned it as a connection." It's really funny, and it really shows how, like, self-aware the movie is, which just adds to its just how funny it is. Um, it's it's a little proto meta, like 90s horror was gonna be. The McNeil kid. Reagan McNeil. Prospect Street. And I've talked before about Giallo and its Exorcist connections. We're gonna see. We're about to have a character wearing a big black hat and a leather overcoat and a little petite woman, but when she runs off, she's gonna look like the killer from Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And it's a great shot of her running down the stairs, just like what David Fincher would do in Seven, with those beautiful shots of Kevin Spacey silhouetted running through the apartment building. Why would Blatty reference Giallo? I don't know. I think maybe just to give us these images. You know, he likes giving us these really evocative. I mean, right here, the chandelier, the lights flickering. This is one note stuff in the hands of someone incapable, but for writer director who only made 2 movies, this is masterfully done. And okay, look at that Joker head. Where did this Joker head come from? And it's on the statue. That is terrifying, but also shows that Blatty knew these archetypes, these current archetypes, and you see that Joker, Ozymandias, Lucifer character all through the cinema of the last 30 years. And here we are. Um, Blatty's like putting it in our face like someone would Masonic symbolism. It's crazy. He's a genius. This is the shot right here I'm talking about. A Giallo. Right there. She's just like a character from a Mario Bava movie, Blood and Black Lace. But largely due to the sound design, that's just such a creepy scene. And it's just this interesting break from the conversation that these 2 men are having. So Lieutenant Kinderman goes back into the dean's office, and they're going to continue their creepy conversation about how these Gemini killings are connected to Reagan McNeil. And they're connected to her because the victims are all connected. Father Dyer, the little boy was the son of the woman who figured out that um, what Father Karras thought was a recording of Reagan speaking a different language was her speaking backwards, which I think is also kind of some retro rewriting because in the book and movie it's a man, but then in this it's a woman. But I think they try to work by suggesting that a woman working for that man figured it out, but that man, is the one who calls Father Karras. Yeah, so that's what they're figuring out right now. So in this movie, interestingly enough, we don't have priests playing priests like we do in the first film. So this character right here, I believe, would be um, the priest that Father Karras says, "Tom, I'm losing my faith." I believe that's who this guy's supposed to be, but it's obviously not the same actor. In fact, I think that actor had passed away by the time this movie comes out. And Father Dyer, that original actor, he doesn't return because I think he had other responsibilities. Um, but if it hadn't been due to those obligations, I believe that same actor was going to appear in this flick. But at least we get Jason Miller. I love Brad Dourif in this movie, and I think it's cool that they use both actors, but it gives it some continuity with the first one. And Jason Miller just has such a great face. Like his face looks like a witch mask. I mean, he looks like a man, but he's got a witchy poo kind of face. So he looks very creepy as a possessed priest. Now here's a connection to Exorcist 2. We have this actor who appears in John Borman's Excalibur as Merlin. And a lot of time on these live streams, my mind goes blank, so I cannot remember this actor's name. Where are you, Heath? Drop it in the chat. Um, Who plays Father Morning? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. This guy, he, like, has no dialogue in this movie either. He's just in this movie, um, to fill that, like, Max von Sydow, older priest vibe. You know, this is Exorcist 3, so this is the studio meddling. They need an exorcism. And that's the only reason this character's here. We get this, like, one scene with him, and I don't think we see him again until the very end of the movie. And, you know, like, it feels kinda clunky on first viewings, but it doesn't bother me. It's fine. This movie also feels paced like a miniseries. If it was longer, like, say, maybe 4 hours, and they could have maybe fixed some of those clunky problems. But also, there's more story in this movie than there is in the novel. The novel's almost a novella. It's very short, and basically the 3rd act of this film doesn't exist in the novel. Alright, so just more weirdness. Now we've got a third fingerprints, um, and this catatonic woman is apparently the one who was, like, in the room when Father Dyer died. So what is going on with all these old people and folks being horrifically, meticulously murdered? Like, not a drop of blood. It's a really cool concept for a movie, and it it it's an Exorcist sequel, but it's a whole new idea. Detective stories are fun. This is cool. You know, we're getting this. He doesn't know it, but he's an occult detective. Occult detective stories are this subgenre of murder mystery. Oh, that's an illustration from Secret Teachings of All Ages. Where, you know, the detectives, instead of solving, like, crimes, they're solving, like, occult mysteries. The Hangman Tarot card, that's a huge one. I don't know what deck that is. That picture of Scott Wilson there, his skin looks awful, like, he just looks like a smoker. But I guess that was done on purpose because all this stuff is really weird in his office, really weird. So by showing us, this doctor character reading this monologue that he's about to give, the director is showing us that this character's been hiding something, and now he's still probably gonna be deceiving since he's reading over what he's gonna say. You know, people telling the truth don't do that. No explanation why he has all this occult stuff and like the weird like Playboy poster on the wall surrounded by X-rays of skulls. Really weird. And he's got these weird rings. I imagine he's supposed to represent somebody who's attracted to the exotica of spirituality, but who's not a Christian, who's not a believer, who's not devoted to a specific sect. Because notice he's not wearing like a Masonic ring. You can't identify what rings he's wearing, but it's like he's trying to give off the vibe that he is initiated. And whereas like someone who was initiated, why would they have their office in a hospital covered with esoterica? I mean, they might, but he just seems like someone obsessed. But yeah, I stand by my comment. This movie plays out more like a miniseries would, um, than a movie. It has interesting pacing and plotting, but it's not a huge deal, and maybe that's because of the studio interference, but Act 1 and Act 2 feel a little different from Act 3, but I guess part of that is you're just getting, like, every couple scenes a new plot twist and a new revelation, so by the time we get the stuff with, "Oh, the Gemini killer has possessed the body of Damien Karras," which now George C. Scott has seen, but we, the audience, still haven't seen, even though we kinda know. Um, yeah, from here now, it's gonna turn more like, "Alright, we're just in a supernatural movie." And it's not in the file. Some some really good, George C. Scott raging in this movie. It's not. It's not. Yeah, I wonder how much of the anger stuff George C. Scott brought to the role. Because even though I was assuming earlier that he was just doing this for the money, it's just a paycheck, he's given it his all. Yeah, I think he got a Razzie for this. He's good in this though. He's eating it up, but it's very enjoyable. It fits the tone of the movie. Yeah, my girlfriend and I, we just watched The Exorcist the other night, and Lieutenant Kinderman, and Damon Karras were not best friends. They did not love each other, but he just said that. He was my best friend. I loved him. But I love that a writer and filmmaker could just say, "You know what? It's gonna make the movie better if we just go with this," and it's just it does make more sense. That's why he knows, like, that is Damon Karras. I know it's really him because he's my best friend, not some guy I saw 2 times, and the second time I saw him, he was dead. It's a Wonderful Life. So, yeah, so Jeffrey Dahmer loved all this stuff. He had to watch almost an hour into the movie to get to this revelation that, uh, a demon is jumping for people. Well, actually, it's not a demon, it's the Gemini killer. A demon, Satan has somehow allowed the spirit of a serial killer to jump from body to body and but primarily live in Damien Karras's body because Damien Karras is, like, catatonic or unconscious. Or maybe like a zombie. I wanna say in the novel, the prologue is, like, his body comes back to life in a morgue. Father Karras does. But isn't that creepy? Jeffrey Dahmer, like, this is one of his favorite movies, and if you think about the conspiracy theories of serial killer cults, like, was Blatty just tapping into something about the connection between demon possession, serial killers, and then whatever truth there is to the MK Ultra CIA serial killer cult stuff, like Henry Lee Lucas and um, David Berkowitz claiming to be part of these larger cults, and or David Berkowitz, son of Sam, taking the fall for a whole bunch of murders who were committed by different people. Surely Blatty knew about these speculations and these unsolved murders and these highly publicized crimes because The Exorcist 3 seems to be pulling from that, and it's just super creepy that it comes full circle where you have a super infamous serial killer who is, claiming he showed this movie to people before he killed them. It's super creepy. A friend over there. So in this scene, he's telling Kinderman that there is this afterlife and there is this, this world of suffering. Yep. All right, so this cop movie has gone into full-blown supernatural territory. Yeah, some of the stuff is kind of goofy though. This is a goofy movie. And Jason Miller looks like his hair's dyed black here, but I think when you see him in the Fear of God documentary from the 90s, his hair is black. So, incidentally, that's William Peter Blatty's favorite word. It's all over these books and movies. Incidentally. All right, like exactly an hour into this movie, we get Brad Dourif looking straight into the camera. So a scene like this and shot like Jonathan Demme shoots Silence of the Lambs, where characters looking right into the camera. Isn't that crazy? But I guess it just works. It was just a directorial decision that was made because it works. It's just so funny that two filmmakers would do that at the same time. Do you dance? So that's more of that Joker Satan stuff. Dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. I don't know why, but in in this Hollywood era, there's some weird archetypal stuff going on, and this movie plays with that mythology, even though it wasn't even like really formed yet. The Beyond the Sea episode in the first season of the X Files features Brad Dourif, and they clearly chose him because of Exorcist 3. Um, the that's a great episode. That's a great episode of the X Files. There's some really good episodes in that first season. Chuckle, like Chucky, because Brad Dourif is the voice of Chucky, and those movies are coming. The first one came out 2 years before this. I think the second one comes out in '90. So this is crazy. You're talking to someone who's been in a cell for 15 years, and they're claiming that they killed somebody, and they're telling you all the stuff that there's just no way they could know. I love stories where an atheist is dealing with impossible things like this. Because, we're all atheists. All believers have doubts. So stories about atheists are far more easier to relate to than stories about believers. Maybe. Who shaves these people? You know, if they're catatonic, he gets a shave every day. Showbiz, these connections between like satanic murder and the movies, theater, the show, showmanship. He should have done that though, because now the Gemini killer is gonna send one of his demon possessed old people after his family. Yeah, I mean this movie just sucks me in, and they do a good job. It really looks like Jason Miller and Brad Dourif would have been on the set at the same time, the way they match these shots. But for everything I've heard, it sounds like they never even met each other. But that could be wrong. I have a theory that Jason Miller must have really pissed off Brad Dourif, or Brad Dourif was really pissed off that they used Jason Miller because Dourif, who I admire, says something really nasty about Jason Miller and like the special features of the Blu-ray release of Exorcist 3, where he accuses Jason Miller of having wet brain, and that's why Dourif got called in to film some stuff. What a horrible accusation! And there's no way that's true, because like if 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 you really have wet brain, that's like irreversible damage done by alcohol abuse. And I've seen the Fear of God documentary that came out after this. Jason Miller, he speaks in that movie. He doesn't come across as someone who has brain damage from alcohol abuse. Um, but you know, people have reputations in Hollywood, and people hold grudges, and who knows? Maybe there's something that we don't know about, and but there's just no way I can hear Brad Dourif saying something so cruel, something so slanderous about Jason Miller, and not think that there's some story there. So he was like just yelling at this character, their previous scene together. Um, but they kind of have a moment here, and I like it when a movie can do that. You know, that's a good example of movies like creating what feels realistic, because you know we have those experiences. You could be working with somebody and like have a tense moment with them, be like, I really don't like this person, and then just also easily slide into something where you're like, you know what, I appreciate this person, or I just have a moment with them. Save your servant. Save your servant. An odd expression. All right, so we introduce Blay introduces out of nowhere. He just decides like, hey, I'm gonna have this character say "save your servant," and Kinderman go, "Oh, what is this? I'm gonna do some research." He introduces this new question sending the protagonist on a mission to get the answer, and by getting the answer, we get a new revelation, and that's going to be that Savior Servant is from the Roman Catholic rite of exorcism. And you may be wondering, how could the book Legion even exist without an exorcism? Like all this right here? Like, is this in the book Legion? I honestly don't remember, but I don't think it is because I can't imagine where in the novel that would go. And if I'm remembering incorrectly, Father Dyer in the novel, he is murdered like if not three-quarters of the way through, like 60% of the way through. Because I ended up watching this movie after I learned about the Dahmer connection. So I guess I hadn't read the book yet. So when I did read the book, after I read The Exorcist, after William Peter Blatty had died, I was surprised at how different it was, even though I knew the exorcism stuff was added to this movie through studio interference. But the novel's short, and it'll be fun to revisit it, especially after seeing this movie. I don't know, this is probably I'd say this is probably about my fourth, maybe even fifth time to see this movie. So a lot of it's in a hospital, old people, crazy ward. We get a lot of scenes in Kinderman's home. So it's grounded in only a few locations, just like the first Exorcist movie is, and that really helps create a sense of place. That's creepy. Is she possessed? Is something creepy about to happen? No, it's just a sweet, cute little moment. But the way that Blatty sets it up and presents it to us, we don't initially, as an audience, know how to react to it. So that's a great way to create dread and keep people, uneasy and have your audience on their toes. So even with its wonky bits, this is a great flick to study. All right, probably the most famous part of this whole movie is right here. The Exorcist from 1973 has a bunch of jump scares. It's probably one of the best jump scare horror movies, even though you're not going to think of The Exorcist as a movie with a lot of jump scares. But Exorcist 3 probably has the most celebrated jump scare of all time. And I love the red that the nurse is wearing. She was wearing that earlier. It really pops with all this white, and it's some foreshadowing. It sends a nice message to the brain that she's gonna be murdered. It's that Little Red Riding Hood, which the first Exorcist film has a blatant Little Red Riding Hood reference after the pea soup scene. Blatty was, a master of psychological warfare, so he knew exactly what he was doing. Weaponizing archetypes and the power of story. Yeah, weaponizing archetypes and the power of story. William Peter Blatty in conversation with Bill Moyers. Yeah, now I know Blatty wrote a book on the making of The Exorcist. I need to read that. I wonder if there's anything on the craft of writing in that book because I don't think we got a William Peter book on writing, and that's a real shame. Why wouldn't he have done that? Alright, so, like, suspense, we're on the edge of our seat. Oh, it's the ice that's been making that creepy sound. The tension's finally broken. Oh! No, there's the jump scare. Man, man, so like I said, one of the most famous jump scares well, no, that wasn't the jump scare. William Peter Blatty is making you think that was the jump scare. And now we're back to the same shot we saw before of the quarter. Just this long, static shot after a great jump scare, and he's just gonna hold it there. She goes back behind the desk. But why is he still holding? Maybe she's about to find something. This is so confident. Like a cop has just walked into the room and now is sitting down. Okay, we had to have a cut. We did have a cut there. Oh, but we're getting a cut because she's hearing noises. Now we're back to just this wide shot. Hospitals are so creepy. Oh, here comes another cop. Oh no, but he's calling that guy away. Now she's alone again. Cop comes back. He had to grab his hat. Oh my god. Now that's the most famous jump scare of all time. It really is powerful the first time you see it. It never hits like that again. But also it's not just because it's a great jump scare. You get that crazy zoom in on a decapitated Jesus statue, and it's just like, what are we looking at? What is with all these decapitated statues and this weird head stuff? Maybe there's going back to that shot that I said looked like it was taken out of an Argento or a Bava movie. Maybe Blatty studied the Giallo, with making his own murder mystery. Green light, green light. What's with the green light? Bold choice. All right, so this creepy doctor with secrets, he's killed himself. So what did he know? No, her last name was Keating, so there's that K again. The Gemini killer only kills people with the name K because his dad's name was Carl with a K. So it's more of that like Blatty's like kind of giving us backstory and details about the killer that seemed to me a little contrived, but I don't mind. Let the author. It serves its purpose. That's all we need. Writing's hard. Sometimes you just have to pick something and go with it. I like how they slow down Brad Dourif's voice, but not like the whole time. It fluctuates between normal to low. It's really creepy. So that's messed up. So like the demon put the Gemini killer in Karis's body to basically be like perverted, to be like, yeah, won't this be messed up? A lot of exposition here. Um, I don't know how else you could do it though. I believe the only option would be to not have the exposition and not have any of this in here. But then would the movie work if you didn't explain this stuff? But that is a good way to give exposition to your story. Have like an emotional character like talking about like what they're gonna do, like this is their plan. This is great. Brad Dourif, he is inside with us. He will never get away. If it wasn't a horror movie, he would have been nominated for an Academy Award. Poor Brad Dourif. He didn't get the Academy Award for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's one of those actors that I don't know. I hope he doesn't resent his B movie status, because those genre movies are the best. I mean, we're not over here talking about Forrest Gump. And yeah, a lot of exposition, but this would work great as a play. So when Blatty's 150 years dead, maybe you could write a play version of this. Be beautiful. Mm. I mean, Brad Dourif sells it. He's been giving us exposition for what feels like 10 minutes, but I'm sucked in. It's not enough to be a spirit. There's no magic. In this artificial box that you call world. So Blatty's talking about the cube. How does Blatty know about the cube, y'all? Like this movie has shit in it that early 20 teens YouTube people were talking about. Oh, I'm just a traveling man? That's a Freemason. He just called himself a traveling man. One who moves. I have dreams of a rose and falling down a long flight of stairs. A clear invitation to the dance. Dance with the devil. Where does this stuff come from? How does Blatty know about this stuff? Dr. Temple. So our kooky occult obsessed doctor, his name was Dr. Temple. I wonder if Blatty read the Serious Mystery and he took that name from Robert Temple. It's a good name for that kind of character. I like it. This is a cool inversion of the Dracula Renfield thing where the Dracula character is actually the lunatic in the straitjacket inside the cell. Brad Dorff is a creepy looking guy. He got creepy eyes. What other actors have eyes like that? Incidentally. I've never heard the word incidentally used so many times. They use it in this movie more than they do in probably the Exorcist novel. Ominous rumbling. So that's what that Exorcist growl sound effect is. Ominous rumbling. Child's play. And then it cuts to a redheaded kid. Yeah, because Brad Dorff was, making Child's Play 1 and 2 around this time. He's thinking, so we're getting lines of dialogue repeated to us to to figure it all out. Not a trope I'm a fan of, but I guess we need that. Otherwise, it just looks like he's walking around looking at things. When instead he's realizing old friends. He's not talking about ancient demons. He means old friends. It's literally old people. He's using old people. Now, this is a cool moment. This is the most exorcisty thing that happens in the movie. So cool. Look at that. Creepy. It's Mrs. Doubtfire. Really creepy. No one notices, even though obviously they would, and it makes no sense. But Blatty knew that a movie like this needs something like that. Oh no. More old people killing. Mm-mm. Oh no, that old lady killed somebody so she could wear nurse clothing. And now she's no, that was a red herring. I love that. Your own family. Okay, that's weird. So his daughter's name is Julie, but so was that nurse. She thinks she's talking to Bill, but she's not. The demon can imitate anyone's voice. So in this movie, like the demon is like straight up like, I'm getting revenge. We're not hearing the name Pazuzu. Pazuzu only gets named in Exorcist 2, as far as the films go. I don't think Pazuzu gets mentioned in Legion. He does get mentioned in the novel The Exorcist. But yeah. So now the movie is like straight up like this is like a demon and cops movie, and the same vein as like the first Power. It would also make a good double feature with Cobra, because Cobra is essentially about cop versus serial killer cult. Really bad, uh, like second unit shots where you can tell that's not George C. Scott in the passenger seat. He's so angry. Okay. Father Karras' EKG is going crazy because the spirit who lives in him is outside of his body and somebody else now. So that doesn't make sense. But as we've shown, Blatty's all for doing what's best for the story. No one makes sense. The poor woman must have just given a terrible performance. They had to dub her voice like this. Or maybe she just had a really thick accent. Because her acting's fine. So she gets there, and the demon's like, I'm gonna, like, just wait for him to get there. Or maybe not. I like that. The crazy racist grandma saved the little girl. Father Morning. That's cool. Well, there's those contact lenses. Jeffrey Dahmer liked them so much that he bought his own pair and would wear them when he went out cruising. How creepy is that? Oh, Nicole Williamson. That's that actor's name. So Nicole Williamson hasn't had any dialogue in this movie so far. Creepy shot. But yeah, at this point, the movie doesn't really have anywhere to go. But let's just do an exorcism scene in this mental asylum cell. But we can have the protagonist go through an arc. If the protagonist completes an arc, then the story will have resolution. And so that's how this movie gets away with the studio interference and being a film adaptation of a short novel that maybe in itself doesn't really come across as fully formed. But as you're about to see with the climax of this exorcism scene, Lieutenant Kinderman, the jaded, grumpy atheist, he gives this great monologue about everything he believes in, and it's all negative things. It's right up there with the "Where the fuck were you" scene from Bad Lieutenant, and the monologue that Willem Dafoe gives at the end of the Last Temptation of Christ. Great imagery here. So, the studio wanted an exorcism, and Blatty does a really great job of creating this final exorcism sequence. Now Nicole Williamson's talking. He has a great voice. So powerful. Now, none of this is what we hear in the Exorcist movie, so I don't know if this is from the Rite of Exorcism or not. Well, this is all different. That's a great shot. How did they do that? I guess they just did that with lights and paper, but it really looks like an explosion happened in Nicole Williamson's face. And that shot, he was obviously laying on his back, but wow. Now there's like some freaking Hellraiser graphic violence for you right there. Kind of comes out of nowhere. So, Exorcist 3, and make sure it delivers. The two-thirds of this movie are like a murder mystery, a really creepy murder mystery. It's like a really creepy episode of Diagnosis Murder where they talk about really violent things. And then, the last 30 minutes, it's just straight up Exorcist, an insane asylum movie. Ominous rumbling. Um, so where's the priest? The Roman ritual. Bring your copy of the Roman ritual, which exploded. Ooh, and he sees where the Cenobites have been, and even though none of that made any sense, we get Father Morning drop out of the corner there because it looks good. This whole time, George C. Scott had a gun on him. No, he's actually calling out to God for help. I believe in death. I believe in disease. I believe in injustice. He's saying all these negatives. Where is he going to go with this? I can't believe George C. Scott got the Razzie. He gives a great performance here. It's totally over the top, but how else do you deliver these lines and do this? Oh, well, that's interesting. That's not even George C. Scott there, but I never noticed that before. Yeah, that's obviously not. That's just an actor they got stand up against the wall. A double, I mean. Okay, so I don't know, like, was this like $1 million? How much this final part here costs? It's really cool though. Lightning comes in and blasts out the floor, and then out of hell comes these insane images right here. Look at this. I'm not gonna say what I'm seeing right now, but I mean that's terrifying. There's something powerful about that image right there. I don't that like just went to something from my childhood. I don't know what that was. Just a weird movie, a weird clunky movie, but there's something deep in here. And I guess it's just the archetypal images. But see, none of that makes sense. Like h- Father Morning saying Damien fight, like he knows all this. So I argue that this would have worked better longer as a miniseries, but you don't really need that. Like what you're just gonna add some extra scenes so some of the stuff isn't weird. Just go with it. Just accept it as a little clunky and go with it. It's a movie that feels like a miniseries that looks like a play. And just like The Exorcist, we defeat the demon by killing Damien Karras. Dark. Shah the Sun, just like how The Exorcist opens. Blatty must have done that on purpose. That's nice. It's a nice way for the films to bookend each other and to nod his hat at Freakin's film. And this is the end. It ends with Damien Karras' body going back in the ground. Society of Jesuits. So what do you think? Is Exorcist 3 the best Exorcist sequel? I'd say it is. And I'd say in some ways it's creepier than the first Exorcist. Although it doesn't have the power of that film. It does tap into some deep stuff, just like that movie can do. Um, the movie, I don't know, it has a supernatural vibe surrounding it, just like the novel and first film do. It's really creepy. I had plenty of technical difficulties trying to get this live stream started tonight, as well as some weird stuff with my vigil candles behind me. Although I don't think they did anything weird during the live stream, but it sure was hard to get them started before. And I don't think weird stuff like that happens because The Exorcist media brings anything wicked. I don't think it's necessarily like if you have a copy of the novel in your house, that's like bringing something evil to your house. Um, so in case you're worried, because like weird stuff has happened to you when you've tried to read the book or like watch the movie, it's not because those objects in themselves are evil. It's because evil doesn't want you to watch or read The Exorcist. Thank you so much. Will probably never do another Exorcist live stream, so it's fun to kind of end it here. And yeah, a different live stream tonight. I was definitely sucked into the movie a little more, and maybe didn't have as much to say, but I it's just a haunting movie that just puts me in a weird mindset. Again, no wonder Jeffrey Dahmer was obsessed with it. It's a really creepy movie, and just amazing that William Peter Blatty, he only makes two movies, this and The Ninth Configuration, which there's some weird stuff there, man. William Peter Blatty, he worked for the CIA and psychological warfare as like the director of that department before he ever wrote The Exorcist. Why? Why him? What did he know that we did not? Jesuit technical advisor, Father George Murray. There's some like second unit Los Angeles stuff. Interesting. I wonder. Oh, that must been like where the sets were. They must be like the cell that Father Karras is in. That must have all been like sound stages in LA. Hmm. There's matte paintings in this movie. Oh yeah, they're thanking Georgetown University. I mean, they're filming in the dean's office. I mean, all that looked real. I don't think those were sets. They might have been. Morgan Creek. Making hundreds of millions off of this franchise. But released through 20th Century Fox. Well, thanks, folks. Save your servant.